Hi, my name is David Bailey. I'm currently an instructor of English at a technical college in South Georgia. Some of you might already be aware of some of my other projects in digital humanities. I work with Remix Art, currently trying to put together a work for that. What I'm going to talk about today is something a little bit different. I've been drawn into a conversation that has apparently been going on much longer than I ever would have imagined. And this is going to be, of course, how video games create meaning. And it's funny, just like even at the very top of this conversation, we think of video games. It's almost awkward to talk about them in an academic context, to look at them and to really dissect them. It actually feels weird just to even say that. The reason I'm doing this as a video on YouTube is because I've tried to write down some comments about this conversation, and it always gets really, really cyclical. And I think that by making a video of the basic precepts that I want to talk about, it's going to help me get my ideas out there, but also establish a little bit more of a structural core to what it is I'm trying to say. And the simple fact is that the main idea that I've been kind of cooking on lately has to deal with the definition of play. Play is a concept that is very, very interesting. Has caused a lot of ink to be spilled. I've seen a lot of different definitions of play. It's one of the hot things to do right now is to talk about what is the meaning of play. How do we define it? I've seen people just, writing whole works just exploring the meaning of play, and there's a storied history of this. And of course, being an academic, I have to kind of discuss the works that I'm basing this on, and actually giving a kind of citation list for all the different things that have come from the concept of play and trying to define and understand it would probably take about 30 minutes. So I'm going to try to rush to the point here. The main person that I'm really getting a lot of information from, and a lot of you are going to roll your eyes at this, is Ian Bogost. And yes, I know everyone talks about Ian Bogost, but I think there's a reason for that. I think Bogost is kind of locked on to a central truth. But I don't think he's done a really good job of actually getting to the core of it. I think there's something that just kind of lays beyond where the scope of this particular work. I'm going to try to get to the heart of that today. And to just get to the meat and potatoes of it, when I think of play, and I think of the complexity of the term and the word play, I think actually having a definition of play is maybe too difficult. What we actually need to do is we need to understand what play does and the different contexts in which it functions in. And here's the way I think of it. Play is a quantum structure. And you'll notice as I post this video on my new blog, Quantum Narrative, there's a lot of very interesting parallels between quantum mechanics and what I would call play mechanics, and that's what Bogost really locks onto. Here's the basic idea. Play is a very small unit operational meaning structure. I would technically argue that almost all forms of meaning, all iterations of meaning, come from a central play structure. Now, the reason I call it a quantum structure is because when you have play, play is fundamentally, in my opinion, more complex, more diverse, and it's just capable of more things. Now, for those of you who are versed in this conversation, there is a bit of a war between the people who would call themselves narratologists, people who want to look at video games from a narrative perspective in order to draw meaning, and ludologists who look at play structure to draw meaning. Ludology is, in my opinion, the sexier kind of way of approaching games because it's a more fundamental unit of meaning. Now, it's interesting. If you look at play in this way, what you get is a very important observation. Narrative cannot function without play. But play can function without narrative. Play is independent. But in order to have meaning, You need to have interlocking units of play within that narrative structure. This is why there's so much of a problem between these two vantage points. Narratologists want to have this overall structural, systemic, operational interpretation of what a video game is supposed to do. Now, the reason I compare this to quantum mechanics is because quantum mechanics work in a very similar way. You have Newtonian physics, right? You have orbits, you have planets. You even have gravity as we understand it on the base level of human interaction. I mean, there are rules. There are things that you can almost always count on. Now, when you get to the quantum level, when you start to get to particles and atoms, those rules do not apply. And there's always been this kind of fight in quantum mechanics because a lot of physicists see this divide, and it's something that they can't quite understand. Why do atoms behave seemingly erratically? Why is there no overarching, what they would call deterministic rule book for how they behave? It seems to swerve. It's random. Most physicists are going to say that there is some type of deterministic structure that determines how atoms behave. It's just kind of beyond our understanding right now. But the thing that I think Bogost has locked onto is that play operates in a more simplistic, but at the same time more open structure, in that it doesn't have to follow the rules of narrative. And that has destabilized our understanding of narrative. And in that sense, play as offered by games opens up a whole new world of possibilities. It lets us experiment with things that go so far beyond narrative, so that, yeah, games can have narrative structures. They can do narrative things, but they don't have to, because they're more quantum levels of meaning-making structures. And the thing is you can see this in the development of a child. A child plays in the way that it moves blocks from one place to another, or it shakes a rattle, or any other types of play structure. What is the meaning and the purpose of that play? That play helps you understand a basic component of your world. And that's really, really important. The fact that play in that instance helps us construct individual operational meaning structures, so that, you know, play in that instance is making meaning, but it's very, very far from a narrative kind of structure. And it's cool because you have all these people who are kind of have their allegiance to narrative, that art has to come from narrative structure in some ways. I mean, the biggest example of this that I've seen is Roger Ebert, you know, games will never be art. Well, maybe they'll never be art from the perspective of they're never going to have full narrative function. But that's not the point. That's not the point at all. I mean, the fact is that we're operating with a new way of making meaning. And art and narrative systemic structure is a very interesting way to make meaning. But this is something completely and wholly different. And the fact of the matter is that Ebert wants to discourage the way that we, you know, look at this kind of random meaning making, this play meaning that we're exploring. But it's like he's right and he's wrong. Just because it doesn't follow your rules doesn't necessarily mean that it's useless. And I mean, the best way to actually look at Ebert in this context is to actually compare him to Albert Einstein. When Werner Heisenberg came along with the uncertainty principle, and the uncertainty principle really remade the world of quantum mechanics, Einstein hated it. It completely blew his mind. He thought that all moral structures, all meaning structures, were being tossed out the window. That it was some type of insanity. So in that case, it's like, yeah, we're kind of the uncertainty guys. We have more tools in the toolbox to work with because we're working with a more fundamentally simple meaning-making structure. Ebert wants to be constrained. He wants to be limited in the function of his art. He wants to have all this stuff being dictated to him. He wants the rules. And in that case, we have to let him stay there, because he's never going to change. That's the way he looks at the world. Now, I'm going to leave off with this. If play is fundamentally a quantum structure, it behaves fundamentally differently. I really wish I could give credit to this guy. I'll try to look it up. It's just that it's coming up off the top of my head. A ludonarrative blogger, said that the problem with games as art is that we have not had our Citizen Kane moment. Well, yeah, because that's a narrative goal structure. We're not going to have our Citizen Kane moment. It's going to be something completely different. Just that a novel could never have its Citizen Kane moment. We will have a defining moment where our art, where our meaning-making structure gets defined in some categorical way. I think it's here, and I think it's Minecraft. And the reason I think it's Minecraft is because Minecraft is so basic and yet so complex in the option it allows the player to create structures, to create meaning, and to interact with the world in personalized ways. That's a quantum structure. It's random. It allows for complex possibilities. It allows for rule breaking, and yet we still personally ascribe narrative structure to it. When you look at games and you look at play from a quantum perspective, when you look at it as it could behave in quantum mechanical terms, it's really kind of magical, actually. And I believe Minecraft is going to be one of the pioneering places that we see this process play itself out. I'm not recording this again. Screw that. Anyway, please give me some type of response if you don't agree with this perspective. If someone has done it before, and that's absolutely a possibility, let me know. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm starting this whole quantum narrative exploration, and I want to draw this metaphor out and see where it takes me. So, as usual, give me some feedback. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm right. I don't know. But thank you.